Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1169. 1169. It's Monday. Yes it is. It's Monday again. We have a Monday every week, don't we? That's right. Well, hopefully yours was a little more fun than mine. But let's go ahead and get into the news of the last 24 hours and then we'll name the dumbass of the week. I guess many of you saw the interview with Attorney General Barr on Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning, and I think it's going to be a two-part interview. I think there'll be another interview we should see next week, or maybe she'll show it one day this week. But anyway, I think this was part one, so it was pretty much the whole video. So it was a pretty decent interview, although again, when you're dealing with asking specific questions to Attorney General Barr about certain things, he really won't go into specifics, but you can read a lot of things about Barr from certain little things he'll say and just his general demeanor about the way he acts when he's asked certain types of questions. So let's go through just some of what we learned from that interview. So Maria Bartiromo brought up to him that what happened, in her opinion, is the closest we've come to a coup. Now, Barr did not use the word coup. He didn't use that word, but he did say that, quote, it's the closest we have come to organized effort. The closest we have come to an organized effort to push a president out of office. So he doesn't use the word coup, but push the president out of office. Okay, you can call that a pooch. You can call it what you want. Pushing the president out of office to me is synonymous with coup. You can slice and dice the words any way you want. But it's very important that he says that. Because it's no longer an issue of him saying, well, we're looking into it, but it could be, it appears that, it's possible that, maybe, no. And he's been saying this in very de facto terms now for quite some time when he's asked and broached on this particular topic. He's no longer questioning whether or not this happened. And remember, Barr is very careful about the words he uses. And he doesn't say, it appears that there's some evidence that suggests that maybe. You get none of that type of stuff. He was very direct, and he's done this now multiple times in interviews, where he says very matter-of-factly, it's the closest we have come to an organized effort to push a president out of office. So he's acknowledging a coup. He is absolutely acknowledging that. And another point that he brought up, which I think is a huge component to it, and I think it's the reason that he wanted to bring it up. Actually, I think Maria Bartiromo brought it up, but he certainly chimed in on the point and wanted to make his position on it perfectly clear about the role of the media, and he didn't go into a lot of detail, but again, with Attorney General Barr, sometimes the way he says things, you can read a lot into what he's saying. And so he said also that he was, quote, stunned by the media. He is stunned by the media, how they have this bovine silence as all this information is coming out, proving that there was no real predicate for the counterintelligence operation to begin with. But yet when all that evidence comes out, the media just kind of blows right off and just forgets about it. They don't actually come out and say, well, you know, we sure got the Russiagate story wrong. No. They just, like he said, they move on to the next scandal. So he says it's bovine silence, and then they move on to the next scandal. And that's exactly what they do. So I think that's important to know that Barr knows what the game is here. And so, I mean, I think that was a decent interview. I still think there's been others that are better, but it wasn't a bad interview at all. And again, you just really can't get any specifics out of Barr. But she did ask him, you know, about how the investigation's going. And she did ask if the coronavirus was having any effect on Durham's investigation. And of course, he says that, you know, Durham's working very hard, doing very best he can. He did say that the coronavirus has caused some problems, has delayed, or he used the word pandemic, has delayed the process a bit because it has slowed down the interviews. And of course, he said that, he didn't use the word grand juries, but he said that, they have not been able to convene, or go to court. Courts have been basically shut down for months now. So that's created a problem. Maria Bartiromo suggested that would have, prevented grand juries, and he essentially agreed with that, but he doesn't want to come out and say whether there is or is not grand juries. Now, of course, John Solomon has already told us that previously, before coronavirus, he had impaneled grand juries. So again, he just doesn't give out a lot of information, but he did say that he expects that there will be some developments by the end of summer. Now that's getting dangerously close to the election. Remember, the end of summer is what? Second week of September. Third week of September. The election is the first week of November. So if he takes all the way to the very end of summer, that isn't going to allow for very much time for it even to soak in. And it would be so close to the election that it certainly could be looked at like it's some sort of October surprise. I think that would be bad timing. He also suggested that that the investigation, would be going on after the election. So he obviously believes, just as I believe, that there'll be multiple, it's not going to be like Durham comes out, indicts X amount of people, the the AG puts out a report, and that's the end of it. I don't think so. I think this is too complicated, too much going on. I think this is going to come in waves. And I think once we get the initial declaration of, okay, we're indicting these people, whatever, I think there's going to be multiple rounds of that. And I do think it will push into next year, because it is such a wide-ranging conspiracy with so many people involved and so much to look at. But I think it's absolutely imperative that Durham at least weighs, and Barr, however you want to look at it, make perfectly clear, preferably before the end of the conventions, which is about the latter part of August. I think that before, in fact, even before the conventions convene in the middle of August, that is when, somewhere between now and the middle of August, that is when they need to come out and at least ways, at the very least, indict some of the people they absolutely know for sure have committed crimes. You don't have to indict them all, and you don't even have to indict all those people on all the potential violations. But I think that it's imperative that prior to the conventions in August, they need to at least ways come out so that there's a clear statement, and by a clear statement I mean charges brought against the coup plotters. That's the only thing that's going to register. A report doesn't work. We've seen the IG reports, 4 or 5 of them. They don't even register because the media doesn't cover them. Only when you get a front page picture of James Comey being perp-walked in handcuffs with Strzok and Page close behind are you going to get the type of attention to the issue that you need. And I think that's what really needs to happen. I will be very upset if they can't get that done, because I think that this should be clear for Barr to understand exactly what's going on here. And he was even asked by Bartiromo that she had a concern that what happens if Trump loses the election, and Barr suggested that, the investigation would likely go on regardless of who the administration is. But he said, yes, I think whoever wins the election will have probably something to do with the way this all turns out. I mean, I can't believe he's that naive. I can tell you absolutely 100% for sure that if Biden were to win the election, Barr would be fired on day one. Barr would be gone. And they would bring in a new attorney general, and he would shut down Durham's probe. Absolutely would shut it down. And I mean, if they can get away with a coup, they can certainly get away with shutting down a U.S. attorney and spoiling his investigation. They certainly can. If you can get away with a coup, you can get away with anything, right? And we're talking about the Democrats here. They would have no problem doing it because they got the media to cover them. So I hope Barr understands the importance of this and why this needs to happen before the conventions convene in August. Late September, late September is too late. And that would create political problems. It would have blowback. So I really hope that he was just speaking in a way that he has to speak to play it safe, not to, mess with the investigation or anything like that. Hopefully that's what we were seeing here. I'm almost certain that Barr understands the full implications of all this. We've seen him interview too many times. I'm certain that he understands this. That you can't put this off. And at some point here in the very near future, you have got to change the narrative because they're still running on the old narrative. The 2018 election, which gave them control of the House, was largely successful because they were allowed this narrative. And if they're allowed to continue this narrative into November, they will. And they'll add more to it. So I really hope that Barr understands, and I think that's what Maria Bartiromo was trying to get across. And I think he got her point. He's just very subtle about everything. But my guess is that what we saw there in that interview is edited. So there's things in there that went on in that interview that we will never know about because they were edited out. And I can also, just watching Maria Bartiromo, you just know that she, off camera, either before or after the interview, has had to express the same type of, feeling to Barr that I just did to you, because we've seen her do it with other people on the show. She's quite aware of what I just told you. So I would be very surprised if Maria Bartiromo at some point, before or after or during a break in the interview, didn't say, Attorney General, you have got to do something. You've got to come up with something. You've got to drop something on somebody before this damn election. You can't drag this thing out to the election. And I'm certain that she probably has made some reference to that. You can just kind of get that feeling about her. She's up on this thing as much as anybody else. So anyway, I highly recommend you watch the interview if you haven't. He was also asked about the situation in Seattle and in general, things with the revolts and things like that. And he did say that as far as when she asked him if the federal government will get involved, he said, well, it's primarily on the local officials and state officials. That would be the mayor and the governor. But he said, obviously, we can't let this continue. So it needs to be sorted out by the mayor and the governor. But at some point, he said, we may have to act at the federal level. And and I don't know what that point is, but I would think that this shooting and the reports that we've been getting coming out of the camp there, the commune in Seattle, I would think based on the activities that went down over the weekend with the shooting, cops not, being able to get in, then the medics come and they won't even go in unless they got police protection. But the commies don't want the cops in there. So, needless to say, it was a shit show over the weekend in Seattle. It continues. Yeah, it is the primary responsibility of the mayor and the governor, but if they won't act, at some point, I almost think that the federal government has to, because there are people, as I understand, somewhere around, 12,000 people or something, including business owners, live within that area that's been turned into a commune, and they have certain federal rights, and they're not being protected. And I don't think that they really have a voice. Now, they have been talking to some people in the media, but they're obviously terrified to say too much because they don't want to be targeted. It's almost like they're hostages in their own town, in their own area right there where they live. That's either their businesses or their homes, and they're essentially hostages. So, I do think something's going to have to break soon, and I am not exactly sure what the political upside and downside. I can see a political upside and downside both ways. I'm kind of inclined, like a lot of people, and even Trump, I've heard say this, just sit back and watch them sort of destroy themselves, because ultimately it's not going to go well. But you do have an obligation to the people that are trapped inside there. Now, they probably just need to get out. And if you live in Seattle, you live in this area with this crazy mayor and a nutty governor, if there's any way you can get out of there, you just got to get out of there, man. You just got to go somewhere else. I mean, I wouldn't want to live in a town like that. Even if this thing is all over when it's said and done, I'd be selling my business, selling my house, and getting the hell out of there. Because it's a chronic condition. It's not going to improve. There's still a lot of other things. Even once that's over, there's still a lot of other problems with these people. So, I don't know. I think that what we could see over the next few years as this situation plays itself out is you could start seeing a mass exodus of people out of these blue states and blue cities, moving into neighboring states that are red states or whatever. But I think you could also see an influx of crazy radical anarchists going to these blue cities and blue states. And of course, it'll turn into a shit show. Obviously, they'll not be successful. But it's a difficult issue. But at some point, someone's going to have to make a call. And I think it's one of them deals where there's going to be upside and downside. I don't think it's a win. You know, it's not a win, 100% win either way you go. There's good and bad about both approaches. But we're going to see, because something to us has to give here soon. Now, there was a very interesting article over on Conservative Treehouse yesterday morning from Sundance. And he kind of touched on something that we speculated on quite a while ago when Papadopoulos first talked about having this situation when he was over in the Middle East. And he met this guy, this Charles Towil, and he was given this $10,000. And at that time, of course, you start thinking about, well, would the Israelis be involved? Is he an Israeli? Papadopoulos even suggested that he may be some sort of an Israeli agent. And we know that one of the people in the Alexander Downhatch Downer chain is also connected to Israeli intelligence, and Downer himself is a sort of neocon connected to the sort of the neocon element of intelligence as well in Israel. So this article Sundance had yesterday is suggesting that Mifsud was contracted by Israeli intelligence, and he lays out, which, you know, obviously we all know that in Israel it's no different than here. You have the pro-Netanyahu type neocons and their group, and then you have the people opposed to Netanyahu. And of course there will be government officials on both sides, and there will be intelligence people on both sides. And it's being suggested by Sundance that it was Obama who reached out to anti-Netanyahu intelligence types in Israel, and it would have been Weissman, most likely, and Mueller, with probably a phone call by Obama to get cooperation, but Weissman and Mueller running this, getting these anti-Netanyahu intelligence people to produce someone like a Mifsud to take part in the coup effort. And it makes a lot of sense, especially now that we have the information that came out about Walid Pheres, and we know that it was Israeli type people involved on his side of the game, as well as the tip likely coming from Muslim Brotherhood people inside of Egypt. That's what he says. So it's a very interesting article. It's not a very long article. There's a couple backlinks to it that you can read. But yes, it is something that we talked about quite a while back when we first learned about this guy, Charles Towil, who gave Papadopoulos the 10 grand. And then, of course, we know that Papadopoulos said that they really grilled him a lot and were threatening with charging him with a FARA violation, and the foreign government that he was going to be charged with, you know, having issues with Israel. So, yes, it is possible. And then, of course, we know that Israeli, both sides, both flips of the Israeli coin, both the pro and anti-Netanyahu side of the coin, both very active in the United States. Probably no one spies on us more than the Israelis. Probably nobody more meddles in American politics than the Israelis. even more than the Russians could ever dream of. And so to find out or to accept that there's a Israeli element in this is absolutely 100% easy to digest for me. I absolutely believe that wouldn't surprise me at all, especially when you hear what Walid Faris is saying on top of what we know about Charles Tawil and the threats against Papadopoulos for FARA violations as it relates to Israel. Well, we have this BLM co-founder coming out saying, of course, the goal in 2020 is to get Trump out. Get Trump out. Now, I don't know if you've been to the website for BLM, but they are, and this co-founder, she's a nut. I mean, this woman is literally she's a real piece of work. She's done several interviews where she's admitted that they are absolute 100% Marxist. They are a pro-Marxist movement. That's what they are, a pro-Marxist movement. And she's happy to endorse them as a pro-Marxist movement. That's the co-founder. And of course, the goal is to get Trump out. Now, you'll notice when you hear these statements by Democrats, by people like this, they don't say to defeat Trump. They say to get him out. There's a big difference between defeating someone in an election and getting them out. And, of course, we have Susan Rice making her statement saying that the goal of the election in 2020 is to remove Donald Trump and consign those, that's all of us, who supported him to the trash heap of history. She's saying two things, again, saying they need to get rid of Trump, remove Trump. They don't say defeat Trump. They just say get rid of him, remove him. There's a big difference between defeating someone in an election and removing them or getting rid of them. Those are different words. They mean different things. And of course, it shouldn't surprise us that Susan Rice considers those of us who voted for Trump as being the types of things that you'd find in a trash heap. In other words, we're trash. We are trash to Susan Rice and her friends. That's what they all think of us. In fact, we are the real targets, by the way. I mean, it's us that they hate. We're the ones that elected Trump. I mean, Trump's just the guy who came along and ran for office and won. And yeah, they don't like him, obviously. But what they really hate is the fact that so many people, all of us, voted for him. They really hate us. They hate Trump, but they really, really hate us. And we're the ones they want to punish if they can defeat Trump. Get rid of Trump. Scary times. And if I don't start seeing some serious pushback from cops, from governors, from business leaders, if we can continue to see the capitulation to the mob, we're going to lose the damn country. I just can't believe there's no backbone, man. People are not standing up. They're terrified of getting, canceled. And it's a dangerous time right now, man, because, when NASCAR has capitulated, the NFL capitulated a long time ago. I mean, there's no one that seems to want to stand up to these people, with the exception of Trump and a few people around him. But if we don't begin pushing back and fighting back, I mean, the tearing down of monuments and statues and trying to erase our history, trying to take over cities and create these communes, the cancel culture, the just everything that's going on around it. If there isn't some serious pushback here very soon, we're going to lose the damn country. And I can tell you that regardless of what happens in 2020, win or lose, we're headed for a very, very turbulent next few years. However it turns out, either way, Trump wins or loses. We're headed for some very turbulent times. So strap yourself in. Let's get to Dumbass of the Week. Gordon Barron, John Roberts, Jay Wexler, the silent majority for remaining silent for so long. Exactly what I just said. The silent majority for remaining silent for so long. If we continue to remain silent, we're going to lose the country. Cards, Boston mayor for removing the statue of Lincoln. Yeah, and he's got a lot of company. There's a lot of bad mayors being exposed right now. Net will go with the Southern District of New York. Berman and Lawfare, one and the same. Sane Environmentalist will go with Antifa. The mainstream media for calling the rioters protesters, and anyone who thinks that this is a good idea. Sisler TX is going to go with Chaz, Summer of Love Mayor. Yeah, the Seattle mayor. And the Summer of Love, John Roberts and the DA who brought charges before the investigation. Exactly. I think that could end up being another thing that could be a real sticky wicket. What he's referring to there. Ricky Ricardo is going to go with the FBI. The Federal Bureau of I'm with her. Scott Johnson will go with the judges who haven't ruled on the Flynn case. Yeah, I mean, in that circuit court, I was disappointed how that went. I was very disappointed. And yeah, I can see where you would certainly give them your nomination for Dumbass of the Week. Scott would also like to nominate John Roberts and Jeffrey Berman. D.B. Cooper. We found D.B. Cooper. He's right here on in the comments section of TowerGate. He would like to go with the Citizens of Chaz, which I think is now called CHOP, but however you wish to call it. Oregon Outback is going to go with moms who didn't send enough snacks to the Chaz folks. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the trust fund kids not receiving adequate snacks to the Chaz compound. Joe Mack is going to go with the Summer of Love Mayor Seattle. Summer of Love Seattle Mayor. Yes, indeed. She's certainly high on the list of a lot of people for Dumbass of the Week. We're talking about, her name's Jenny Durkin, by the way. Daniel is going to go with Bolton. John Bolton, the Walrus. Sigma 61 will go with John Roberts. Don the Trader will go with John Roberts. Lori Holt will go with John Roberts, Berman, and Paul Howard, who's also a district attorney, who's weak. Good Old School will go with the Gunslingers in the Zone. Peter James will go with the mainstream media, the Pencil Neck Geek, Adam Schiff, and Nancy Piglosi. Youngblood is going to go with Roberts. Rock Steele will go with Comey, Karl Marx, and the Supreme Court justices. Do you think that they'll topple any statues of Karl Marx? Jeanette Bateman, John Roberts, John Bolton, and the Seattle mayor. Damian Hornet will go with all the lefties who love Bolton. Yeah, well, he's getting a lot of love from them now, but it's just very temporary. They'll go back to hating him again just as soon as they realize he's of no use to them. But he doesn't care. Obviously, he did this probably for money, but now it looks like he's going to be deprived of any income from the sales of the book. And he might be facing criminal charges as well. Friend in Liberty is going to go with Matt Willoughby. Yeah, Matt Willoughby, most of you don't know who he is, but he made a nasty comment about me in the comment section. You know, I don't mind people commenting on the topic or something I covered or have a disagreement or something, but when someone just drops by for a drive-by personal attack on me, I don't like it very much. I suggested to Mr. Willoughby that I doubt that he would say what he said in that comment section to me to my face. Bet he wouldn't say it to me to my face. Berman and Susan Rice as well for Friend in Liberty. And Susan Rice, you know, Biden has put himself in a hell of a pickle. First of all, he said he was definitely going to have a female VP, and that's locked in. He can't get out of that. And then he's now been sort of coerced into saying he's going to have to be a black female, so we can almost be sure that Biden is going to almost has to select a black female. And when you look at that list of black females, the only one with any national name recognition is Susan Rice. She has no executive experience, but she served in Obama's administration. She's been around a while. People know the name. She might be the safe pick because they're going to need someone, if they in fact do go with Biden, if he comes out of the convention is still as the nominee, what they're going to have to do is they can't hide him for 2.5 months. He's going to have to go out there. So what they'll probably do is keep him at a very low profile, and they'll be counting a lot on his VP. And I think that Susan Rice is probably the #1 person right now to be his VP. And they're going to have to put a lot on her. She is going to have to go out and carry the water. And a lot of people are going to know that Biden's not going to last a full term, his first full 4 years. No way he's going to make it. So a lot of people will be looking at Rice like, well, if Biden wins, it's likely Rice is going to become the president in fairly short order because Biden's not going to make it. Now, people in this country do not vote for vice president. They really don't. No one really cares all that much. It matters in some degree sometimes. You want to choose a VP who can carry a state for you or a particular group for you. But generally, people do not vote for vice president. But I think that that if the Democrats are forced to stay with Biden coming out of the convention, it's going to put a lot of pressure on whoever his VP is because they're going to have to go out and carry the water. They're going to have to keep Biden as low profile as possible, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on his VP. And I think it's likely going to be Susan Rice. Now, she is not a genius at all. She's kind of dumb. So I don't think she can carry that kind of weight for Biden, and I wouldn't expect to see too much from that. But I think they're kind of locked in, and I would say right now Susan Rice is probably the top tier person, that he will likely select for his VP. Stay Giorgiani is going to go with John Roberts. Paul Howard and Nadler. Ree Vin is going to go with Judge Lamberth. Jenny Tweets will go with Berman and Comey. JV is going to go with Roberts, Bolton, and Gorsuch. Joey D will go with Roberts, Gorsuch, and Berman. Douglas is going to go with anyone who wore a mask at the Trump rally. Kimberly Guilfoyle. And the Do Nothing Passport Office. Well, I guess Douglas has definitely got a case of the ass with the passport office, clearly. But at least he's giving the cruise line industry a break in the action. But obviously Douglas is not very happy with the passport office. My guess is he's trying to get out of town. And there's a waiting list. Rubles is going to go with Google. Google. No doubt about that. Freddie Schaffer is going to go with Roberts, BLM, and AOC. And AOC has got a primary coming up, I believe, on Tuesday. There's about a half a dozen people in that primary, and that's probably why she'll win. If it was just between her and this former news anchor, Cabrera, I think Cabrera would beat her. But now there's so many people in there, you're going to get the AOC vote, and everyone else will be split, and so AOC will probably end up winning. I hope she doesn't, but that'd be my guess if I were a betting man. Mockingbird is going to go with Roberts and the head of Chaz, the warlord. Gump Worsley is going to go with Black Lives Matter. Kurt Nasta will go with Tim Kaine, Pelosi, and AOC. And China News will go with the Bug-Eyed Fool. So, we tally them all up, and it looks like the winner this week, pretty easily, by the way, pretty handily, the winner this week of Dumbass of the Week is John Roberts. Well deserved. This guy just, it's one thing after another. He just never seems to get it right. Just like the guy who appointed him. Jeffrey Berman will be Dumbass of the Week number 2. Yeah, that was a dumbass move. Refusing to go after he'd been fired or asked to resign. So yeah, he did look like a dumbass in that move. That didn't work out very well. And then, of course, number 3 is going to be Mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin, who now has a couple of murders on her hands. Blood on her hands now. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.